Welcome to Veronica Live, and I'm here. He's been on the show before, and last time we fully talked about his book, but he was a speechwriter and worked for Trump, so I was like, I really wanted to talk politics, and we've had so much politics in the world. So welcome back, Chris Gates. He's the author of Moonshine over Georgia. Welcome back to Veronica Live, Chris.
Thank you for having me on again.
Well, there is so much to talk about, and I know you were texting me about the Southern Baptist Convention, and my ex has been like on fire because I guess some things have happened today, and you know, for I'm a Catholic, but what's going on over in the Baptist Church? So I wanted to start there with you. What's happening?
Well, essentially, there was an infiltration of, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I first became really tuned into it when I was a columnist at townhall.com, and then even more so when I got into Governor Bevin's administration, not because of anything in the governor's office, just because of some churches I was attending around the Lexington, Kentucky area.
Right.
And I began to hear some things from Southern Baptist church pulpits that I found really disturbing. And really some thinly veiled references to forms of Marxism and critical race theory, all that kind of stuff. So I began to start knocking on doors and asking for meetings with people in the leadership of the SBC, which at the time, working in the governor's office, I had enough clout to at least get them to take my interview.
Yeah.
And I really began to peel away the layers, and that has been an ongoing movement. The Southern Baptist Convention is the largest single voting bloc of conservatives in the United States, about 14 million conservatives. And that's why it's important to your listeners.
Wow.
It's not just
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. It's not just a church thing, although that's important in and of itself, essentially important. But it is also a political thing. So there's been a lot of preaching in the Southern Baptist Convention, not in all churches. Many churches don't even know what's going on in the convention.
No, I don't, because normally it's my pope causing the problem. So I'm excited to hear about this. I'm shocked that CRT is in the Baptist church. Why would CRT be pushing that, or be that agenda? Why would that be in there?
Instead of talking about individuals, I'll tell you how the mechanism works. So they saddle up to a guy who's in seminary, who's on a shoestring, he's barely able to feed himself.
Right.
And I say they, I mean some entity of the left. And they don't come at them just like Satan in the Garden of Eden. They don't come at them as a pitchfork and horns and a red tail. They come at them as a fellow Christian believer. And, hey, we would love to get you to speak at our meeting that we're having. We can pay you $10,000. So this guy's never seen $10,000 in the last 5 years. And they begin to talk to him and tell him, we really think that marriage doesn't have to be between a man and a woman. Now, we know you don't agree with that, but could you just come and speak to how maybe conservative Christians are too harsh on the issue of marriage? And I'm oversimplifying a little bit here, but that's basically how it works. So he does one speech, and then the next thing you know, well, we can have you back again. We could pay you $20,000 this time, and we can fly you to a 5-star hotel out in Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh! So they're whining and dining them then.
Yeah, before you know it, these guys are card-carrying liberals, and I can recommend a book that's coming out. It's not my book, but a woman that I've spoken with a few times, Megan Basham, has got a book coming out in about a month called Shepherds for Sale. She'd be a great guest for you, by the way.
Okay.
And she is laying out the money trail in that book of how these guys end up being influenced by the left. They don't even see it. It's happening so gradually. I don't think a lot of them even realize it.
I saw it with Joel Osteen when they had that hurricane and he wouldn't let people in his church. So, I'm like, what the heck? And then I saw something too. Is this part of it? On X I saw today, because literally stuff is obviously happening, that they don't want women are they pastors? Is that was something that I saw, which I'm here I am from the Catholic Church, and, we have just the guys. So is that part of it too?
Yeah, that's an old-timey stance of the Southern Baptist Convention, going back 100, 200 years, that only men should be pastors. And that we believe that's biblical. And our statement of faith, which is called the Baptist Faith and Message, says that unequivocally. Well, a lot of churches have begun to appoint women pastors. And then they're defying the Baptist Faith and Message, but then they still want to have the advantages of being an SBC church. So today there was an amendment passed, or an amendment proposed. It did not pass because the liberals won today. But that said, hey, if you want to have a woman pastor, that's fine. It's your church. But you need to withdraw from the Southern Baptist Convention, because we don't believe that men should do that. Now, women can be youth directors. Women can have other offices in the church, but they can't be men pastors.
Well, I'm okay with that, because you sign up, and that's the church you're in, and why do we have to shake it up if that's the way it's always been? Right.
And it's really not even just an issue of whether a woman should be a pastor or not. It's a part of the infiltration. First they get us on women pastors, and then they'll move us more to the left so that we accept gay pastors. That's where the trend seems to be going. I can't give you
because right now you guys don't have that, correct? As a Baptist,
it's not as much about a movement of getting women to freedom to be pastors as it is a movement to move the SBC leftward, so that they can neutralize the people that are behind all this. The people that have an infinite amount of money don't care one way or the other about the Southern Baptist Church or any of their believers or religion. They care about politics. So they're trying to liberalize Southern Baptist Church goers, and so they tend to vote more Democrat. That's what it's all about.
I'm tired of that, because, we don't need all of these extra agendas, and I assume the Baptists are like the Catholics. You guys are huge pro-lifers as well.
Right, yes. And we have been pretty solid on life, but even that, there's been some muddying of the water on that issue, which should be a clear-cut issue. It's all just a political agenda. It's not that they even have a good theological leg to stand on, but they are good at spin and all that sort of thing.
Well, the number one Republican Catholic is President Biden, who is killing babies, and I'm over it. I'm totally over it, Chris.
Yeah.
So you got to stand up and fight the fight. I mean, what do you predict is going to come out of this Southern Baptist Convention? Will the church split, or are you all strong enough to stay together with your doctrine that you started with?
Well, the convention ended today. There were two big pushes by the conservatives, and that one was an amendment to our Constitution that said the seminaries and all these guys have to have total financial transparency, so we can see where some of their donations are coming from, with a procedural trick, and that was defeated by a procedural trick in committee, very similar to the Democrats in Congress do it. So that went down. And then another amendment was to abolish the ERLC. The ERLC is a political activist arm of the Southern Baptist Convention that was formed back in the early 90s. And it was the first place that the liberals infiltrated. And so rather than represent the feelings and political beliefs of 14 million Southern Baptists, they began to parrot the talking points of the Democratic Party. So there was a vote to abolish that entire department, which has a big budget, by the way, and it did get a 38% vote, which was huge. Because if you would have proposed that 3 or 4 years ago, you would have got a 1 or 2% vote. So that tells me the conservatives are making progress. But yeah, we've got a fight on our hands,
Oh my
and we
gosh.
don't want to just split, we don't want to just split because the Southern Baptist Convention has $9 billion in assets,
oh my goodness,
which were paid for with the widow's mite. Little old ladies donated their tithes to build all these seminaries,
right,
and to build mission fields, things for missionaries, and we don't want to just give that over to the liberals.
No.
So we're going to stay and fight, and I was actually encouraged by what happened this year. We at least got everybody's attention, and we moved things to the right a little bit, but it's going to take 2 or 3 more conventions to get us back on track.
Okay, well, I never thought the Baptists would have all these liberals in there, because all the Baptists I know don't drink. So, and they're very God-fearing, religious people trying to do the right thing, and I'm just shocked. I'm shocked.
And
but
80% of the people in the pews are that. They are conservative.
Yeah.
They are all the things you just described. It's the 20% of the leadership that's causing the problem.
Wow. Well, I hope you can oust it. I had Reverend Raphael Cruz. He's the dad of, Pastor Raphael Cruz. He's Senator Ted Cruz's father's been on my show, and he said if all the evangelical Christians actually voted, we could, as a voting bloc, we could oust the Dems and take over. And that's why at like 84 years old, he hasn't retired, because he feels this passion that we have to fight harder for our country, and you have to preach from the pulpit. Wow. So what's next then? Next year, is it a yearly convention? Will they come back next year and vote again? How do you see?
Yeah, the conservative movement is growing, which sounds funny. I mean, the whole Southern Baptist Convention was conservative as recently as 2005.
I'm shocked.
But like I say, 80% or more of the people in the pews are conservative. So the conservative messengers are what we call basically our political people that go to the convention. We will try to grow that movement, recruit more messengers to attend the conference. And that's the same thing that Mr. Cruz said, Reverend Cruz, is a problem in this SBC, because today 3,600 Southern Baptists voted on behalf of 14 million because not that many churches sent messengers. So we've got to recruit more messengers. We've got to get more people to come to the convention so that we can turn this thing back to the right.
Well, I think you might have your mission, Chris. You've got to run with this football. God's calling you. I mean, I'm the Catholic. I'd run with it, and try to help you. And hopefully when we launch the podcast, you can share this around, because, I'm tired of... I just had a reverend on my show, my last interview, and he actually was a Democrat that just became a Republican in 22, a black man, and what pushed him over was the pro-life issue. He just couldn't kill babies anymore, or be in that mindset. He always thought it was wrong, and so I think we've got to fight this fight, and saving babies and pushing back on these people. I'm over it, because I follow the White House and I follow Kamala Harris on Instagram and Joe Biden, and they're constantly pushing. I mean, their number one agenda item this year is women's health, that we've got to have abortion. And I'm just, we know too much now with ultrasounds and heartbeats, and it's truly a baby. So I'm over that. And I just can't believe the Baptists. I've always thought of you guys as running shoulder to shoulder with me when that came with the pro-life, issue.
And as I say, most of the people in the churches are. It's just we got to get the people that got themselves, they worm their way into positions of leadership. It's kind of like a lot of you see all the red states that voted, or red counties that voted for Trump, and yet we're being run by liberals. It's a very similar model.
Well, and you are political, and last time I wanted to talk politics, we barely touched on it. So how do you feel about November's election? I am scared to death. This lawfare, Trump being indicted on however many counts it was, 34 or whatever. I lost count. All of that was guilty. It's all been fake. This week, Hunter now is the brand new felon that's added to the felon club. Yet we know his laptop was real, yet we had all of those intel officers that wrote, I think it was 51 that signed the letter saying that, it was Russian collusion. Where do you fall in all of this? Because I'm so scared about November. I've got a regular former retired congressman that says Trump isn't going to win. And he's a Republican in November. Where does Chris Gates stand on this?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. After the Trump trial, it's really hard to call it a trial, the kangaroo court.
Yeah, that's what I call it.
I put on my social media that now that we see how far they're willing to go and how deep the corruption runs, I wrote that if we don't get 60% voter turnout in the next presidential election, we have already lost the republic. It won't be a matter of if we do this, we will lose the republic. It will have been lost. And so this we just had a primary in Kentucky where I live. We had 13% turnout. That is a perfect recipe to end up in some totalitarian country. So we got to get 60% turnout because we've got to overcome the made-up votes, the fake mail-in ballots, all the trickery that they'll do. And whatever they did last time, they've brought new tricks up their sleeve, I'm sure, that we haven't even thought of yet. So we need massive voter turnout to offset that. And I think there are enough people in the country that feel strongly enough about this election that would vote for Trump if they'll just go to the darn polls.
Well,
you're right to be concerned because they're definitely going to try to steal it.
I'm scared to death. And I just spent 6 days running around New York, and I know I texted you a picture and you're like, oh my gosh, tell everybody to leave. But my gauge of why things are changing is I had, you walk 8 miles a day, but you also take like 3 to 4 Ubers or Lyfts or Rebel, the electric car. And so every time I took about 3 to 4 of them a day, and most of the drivers are immigrants. And so I chatted up the immigrants, and actually my driver Monday was a black African American, and they are all fed up with especially New York has gotten 450,000 migrants, illegals that have come there. And they're, one of the scams that the black driver told me about was, if you're not working, you loan your social security number out to this illegal that's the Uber Eats guy, and he makes the money and he'll pay you like $300 to $400 a month for your social security number. So there's all these new scams out there too, but that was their number one issue. They were all ticked off, Chris, with all of these people that have taken over the city, and then the crime that comes along with it. And then of course this week or last week when Biden now is trying to pretend like we're doing something at the border. So everyone I talk to, and especially all the legal immigrants, and I'm done with the border situation. I'm scared to death, So what are your thoughts on the border? And I think they're saying now it's like maybe 15 million illegals have entered our country.
Yeah, that's probably low. I think you're right, and I see it here in Kentucky too. People that have never talked politics with me before are engaged now. So hopefully the numbers are high enough, and I'm hopeful that it's high enough that we get the 60% turnout and we get President Trump elected. The border thing is there's no discussion needed. It's so blatantly treasonous to throw the border open. We know now, yesterday, they arrested a bunch of guys who were very high on the terror watch list, who were already over here, who walked right across the southern border undetected. So if they did it, more did it. And that's another part of the election thing that's terrifying. Is there going to be some kind of terror attack from these 15 million people we let in that's going to somehow stymie the election from happening or make people so fearful that they won't go to the polls because there's actual violence somewhere? And I'm really concerned that's possible too. All we can do is pray.
Well, what about the part 2 of that is if we do take it over, Trump has said he's going to deport these people, and I feel so unchristian, but I don't know who you are. And then I think back, it was like a week or two ago, they were in the courtroom with Laken Riley's family, and it was the first time they were in the same room with that illegal
guy
that had been arrested in New York, and then he killed her in Georgia, and the mother, the mother's face and the crying, like I don't even know how she lives day to day to get through her daughter that was doing everything right, that would be alive today if this loser hadn't come through the border. And so I felt my heart ached for that family, and I don't know who these people are. I'm ready to pack them up and give them an EBT card with $10K and go back to your country.
And that's something that everybody's got to realize. Let's just be optimistic here and say that Trump wins the election. I really encourage your listeners to go to hillsdalecollege.com and find the speech that Newt Gingrich did the other night entitled, "What's Wrong with the Department of Justice?"
Okay.
And in it, Newt reminds me of something that I first heard from the governor that I served, Governor Matt Bevin. When we were in pre-election mode, and we were a big political long shot. Nobody thought we had a prayer of winning, but we did win. Governor Bevin told me, he said, "Chris, it's not going to be enough to win this election. We need 16 years to turn the ship around."
Yeah,
Why did he
I
say
feel that way.
Because the civil service and the Department of Energy, Department of Education, EPA is so inundated with Democrat liberals. And when you go in, like where I worked was DOE headquarters, I reported to the deputy secretary. So I was up high in the big offices. But you go down one or two floors, and it's nothing but these big granite buildings are nothing but giant cubicle farms. And those cubicles are filled with people the Democrats have been populating it with for 45 years.
Right.
And so whenever President Trump would do an executive order or do something to help energy, those people in those cubicles did everything they could to throw sand in the gears, to slow walk everything. We ran into it in Frankfurt, too, when I was serving in the state capital of Kentucky. So we'll call that the civil service. You've got to have 10 or 15 years of straight-out war, ideological war, to get these people replaced.
And I've heard that.
Impose your agenda.
Right. I've had another author, he wrote Big Intel. He's a former guy that worked with the CIA and FBI, and he talked about they've been there like 16 years at this point. And then having had civilians work for me when I was in the military that sucked, I couldn't even fire them. They make it impossible to fire these people, even when you have a file that's like 3 feet tall. Well, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating.
And that's what we as voters have to steel our spine, because let's say Trump wins and he starts doing what needs to be done and firing some of these folks, he's going to be just attacked as bad as he attacked for when he was president before. They'll be even worse when he starts firing people that are permanent Washington, D.C. swamp rats. Right. So as voters, we got to stay with him. We can't fall for the lies again and, Russia collusion or whatever lies they come up with to try to get him stopped so that he can't continue what he's doing. And then we got to vote for the next conservative that runs after him. Maybe it's going to be his vice president. We got to keep Republicans in power, conservatives in power.
For a long time.
For 10 or 15, 20 years, and we got to ignore the noise.
Well, I mean, part of the problem is, our country's lost its moral compass, and they just don't get it, So, and I wanted to ask you, do you think, because literally every day President Biden is just, I'm like, what's he going to do today? He can't talk. He looked like he was pooping on stage in Normandy. I mean, he trips, he falls.
So embarrassing.
Like, we are such weaklings right now. This week, I mean, this is scary. And the Pentagon, I just saw, is like on high alert. We've got Russian sub, and their naval fleet going over to Cuba, and they really haven't played in our zone before. So I'm like petrified. If he's elected again, plus, can we even make it to the January inauguration without some sort of World War III, which people are saying we're headed that way. So what do you think? I'm just like, the man's a disaster, and I blame his wife. I put that on X all the time. I blame Dr. Jill, because there's no way this man's running any of this stuff. I've heard it's Susan Rice. I've heard it's Obama. They're all tag teaming. What do you think, Chris, is happening with Biden and How do we survive
Well,
the next few months?
If he wins, then that cabal that you just named, Susan Rice, Obama, George Soros, will run the country. Right now, they're a little afraid to go all in because they are afraid Trump will get elected. But once they don't have to fear that anymore, then they're going to go all in. And it won't matter if they've got the Cookie Monster for president. They're going to implement a level of Marxism that we never thought was possible in this country. And I can't even let myself think about it. I really do think this is our last chance. Even Newt Gingrich, who was a pretty pragmatic person that's not given to hyperbole, he said in his speech that I referenced a while ago, we're in more danger right now than at any time in our history since Washington crossed the Delaware.
Well, it's so sad, and I've been putting that out there on X too, that I've lived in a third world country and I've traveled to some of these where I truly, truly saw poverty. There's no EBT cards to go get your nails done or big screen TVs in your little house. I don't think Americans understand. And, just traveling around, a lot of people are barely making it too. That's the other thing, that they're trying to have multiple jobs to make it. And so I don't know. I'm scared to death if we don't win in November. And they're going to try everything. Because I know July is when Trump goes back to the court, and they're probably they're probably going to put him in house arrest, so he doesn't travel. Or like there's, dear Lord, please don't put him in prison. But even Steve Bannon now has to report to prison for 4 months starting July 1st. So
I think they're absolutely going to put President Trump in prison. I'm confident they're going to.
Really? Oh my gosh,
yes.
This hurts my heart.
Because they're that
Well, they're evil. Yeah, no, I've started to say, I hate to say this, but I think Democrats are diabolical, because why would you want to live like this? And do this, and Trump truly is up for sainthood. I mean, the man, I don't know how he walks every day and fights this fight with people stabbing him.
I know, he's amazing.
Seriously.
And by the way, he was on Truth Social, or one of them today, was doing a little clowning around with one of the MMA fighters, which I thought was great. It was great to see him smile like that, see him with that energy. But even if they put him in jail, that doesn't automatically mean he'll lose the election, but it'll be really, really, really bad. But I think maybe the Supreme Court would step in at that point. And that's another thing. We don't even protect our Supreme Court justices. What Samuel Alito's going through right now is an abomination.
Right.
And nobody will back him up. The Justice Department won't lift a finger.
They're all tainted. They're all so tainted.
We need to pray for our Supreme Court justices and their families too. We need a lot of prayer over the next few months.
Well,
and then we all need to vote.
Oh my! Well, and I don't know, because we had a mayoral race here, and I think it was 13% voted, and this is a red county, Chris, in Florida, and people don't even freaking go out to vote. So I don't know what to do to wake people up, honestly.
Keep talking, keep doing your show, and I'll keep writing, and we got to do the best we can.
So, also, I got kicked off at X because I sent you what kicked me off.
Yeah.
Because Fox News put out an article saying that Biden wasn't supporting Netanyahu. And I said, oh, great job, Biden, kicking, Netanyahu in the gut. Now I'm on, I went over 2 million feeds on Monday because I've only been active the last couple months. And so now I'm in lockdown, and I never thought that X was going to be a platform that you couldn't be free on, because I've seen literally X-rated stuff on X, which I cannot believe that stuff's on there because you bump into it by accident. And, but my kick Biden in the gut is a bad thing. What are your thoughts on Israel? Because I have felt, it sounds like now hopefully we're going to have this ceasefire. Those 4 hostages were they went and fought for them. Sadly, one of the IDF guys, one of their studs, was killed. But I just, the whole thing has been horrific to me. And I know you posted about it too, the Jewish hatred around the country. When I was in New York, they had the Hasidic Jews with the men have those curls and they wear the hats, and I saw them everywhere. And then I actually ate at a restaurant that is amazing. It was an Israeli restaurant that I absolutely adore in New York City. And the lady next to me had the Star of David on her, wearing a ring, and I was just like And I was nervous actually eating at this restaurant because, the hatred is alive and well. And then all these damn protesters that at these colleges, what we've gone down, with nobody pushing back. Talk about that. I would never think in 2024 we would have people that hate Jews and are beating them up and this is our country, and they think that what happened in Israel is fake with all the deaths and the rapes and the putting babies in ovens. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, when you import 15 million people across your southern border, you get a lot of terrorists. And I think you take the average crowd, like that crowd that just marched into a Jewish neighborhood yesterday, shouting all kind of epithets and holding the swastikas. What that is probably made up of is about 6 or 8 people from the Middle East who are huge radicalizers. And then you get a bunch of liberal college students from Brown University or some darn place. Right. And they get brainwashed by these people because they don't know anything about the world to start with. And so a lot of the numbers are our own people that have been radicalized by terrorists that we let come across the southern border. And, it's a major crisis. And I said you mentioned my Facebook page, what I wrote was, it's not just an anti-Jew mentality, it's an anti-God mentality. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother on my father's side was a Jewish woman. And so I'm 100% pro-Israel. I wish the heck Biden would get out of their way and let them do what they need to do over there. But that's been true since 1965. I mean, we've been stopping them from doing what really needs to be done ever since. And that, again, I mean, that's almost biblical proportions when you see how much unrest there is in the Middle East. And the huge rocket attack they suffered, I think it was night before last, from Hezbollah. So that's nothing but a proxy for Iran. So, we are as close as we've ever been to World War III. There's no doubt about it. And it's not just Israel. It's Russia and China going into Ukraine, and China wanting to go into Taiwan too. Which I think both of them will do that if Biden wins re-election because they know how weak he is.
So they're saying that, Trump's not going to announce who the VP is until the RNC convention. Who do you like and who do you think it might be?
Several on his list I think would be good. I'm really intrigued by Vivek Ramaswamy.
I am too.
I thought he was the most articulate debater I've seen maybe in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I do worry about his past because he kind of leaned.
He's new to the Republican Party.
Yeah. But I am intrigued by him. I'd like to hear some of those behind-the-scenes discussions. I've always thought Tom Cotton was pretty solid. I do like him. Donald. I would love to see Byron Donald, but I don't know that he's got enough name recognition to get it. Scott is okay. He doesn't excite me.
He doesn't move me. He's and he's on every national show. Kind of but he's just not
the road guy. But I would say Donald, Cotton, or now I do know a guy who's on the staff for Burgum when he ran for president.
Yeah.
And he's a solid guy, but he's more like he leans more towards a McConnell Republican than a street fighter.
No. And then, the left, they'll be like, oh, it's a white male. Nope, can't have it. What about Rubio? Yeah. Do you not like Rubio or J.D. Vance?
Yeah, he'd be okay. Rubio wasn't as conservative as I had hoped early on, but he's really come around in the last few years. So, I'd be okay with Rubio.
Well, I don't think I would very experienced, I have to say, at this point.
He is.
And then what about
I don't think I'd be quite as excited about him as I would about Ramaswamy or Byron Donald, but he's been around and got a lot more experience than either one of those two.
Well, Ramaswamy, he's got to have some prominent role because he's been a fighter. I mean, he's actually stood up for Trump nonstop, even when he was running, and I like that. I mean, I'm concerned because he hasn't been a Republican that long, but he's been great. And what about this one's off the wall, the Tulsi Gabbard? I heard her speak at an event at the end of last year, and she actually was incredible, so dynamic.
She's my favorite. She's my favorite Democrat, but she's still out of the Democrat Party, so I'd say hard no on that one.
And that I've put on X, that I don't know her life stand. Where does she stand on being pro-life? And then it was funny because in the beginning, everybody was like Trump and RFK Jr. And then of course RFK Jr. came out a couple weeks ago as, we'll kill the baby until the day before it's born. And I was like, what the hell? I mean, these people are crazy.
Yeah.
They're crazy when it comes to baby killing. So
there's never a time that I'll ever support a Kennedy for anything.
Well, if you're, I don't know. I've had a lot of pro-lifers on my show, and they've, met women that have had abortions. They never recover from it. And then they've met, I had somebody on recently. There's an organization of people that should have been aborted and weren't, and how they cope with it. And these are humans with unique DNA, and they need to be given a chance for life. So I'm always going to fight for that. What about, it's been so crazy because Nancy Pelosi, that video, did you see the video the last couple days of her saying, she should have listened to Trump and had the National Guard there, and it really is falling the J6 stuff on her feet. And then, of course, I've had all kinds of people that have been engaged with J6ers, and they're literally rotting in these jail cells.
Yeah, it's horrible. Horrible. I did not see the video, but I've thought the whole time that the January 6th was a false flag event planned by Pelosi, Miley, and Schumer. And they wanted a photo op. They let some of those people in because they wanted to have huge numbers. They wanted to show a riot and then call it an insurrection. So, yeah, it's going to be, I don't know if we'll ever find out all the nefarious things about January 6th in our lifetime. But, yeah, those people being in prison without a trial, and then the trials are such a put-up job. It looks like the Supreme Court's getting ready to overturn something. It's hard to even get your mind around all the really un-American things that are happening in America these days.
Well, I mean, the New York trial was just insanity. I never thought he'd be like all of the counts. Did every single one he'd be guilty? And I thought it was a kabuki theater the whole time. Somebody scripted all of this crap. And then of course the judge, a Biden donor, his daughter raised $100 million. We are fully a monkey banana republic now. So, well, what are we missing, Chris? I mean, we've gone around the world. I've just came from, New York City, and the pride flags were everywhere. It drove me insane because I'm tired of agendas. I want America first and America to be the agenda. And it's literally crazy. And, I know lots of gay people. They're nice, love them. And they're not pushing this radical agenda. How do we save the world?
Guys, well, that's revival is the number one way, but don't forget to connect the dots between the radical transgender movement, the gay pride movement, open borders, the Jew hatred. All these things are connected, and all of them are being funded by a handful of billionaires who are Marxists who want to bring America down. And we got to fight on multiple fronts. You said, how do we wrap it up? We did 40 minutes here on politics, so I'll very briefly touch on my book.
Oh, please.
Moonshine
which is
over
lovely.
Georgia. And I want to talk about this a minute because literature still matters. The great thinker, great conservative thinker, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was kicked out of Russia for his Christian writings, had some really eloquent things to say about literature and how literature can elevate a culture, and literature can do more than just tell the truth. It can shatter through lies, because a lot of things will speak to a person's heart through storytelling and good literature that they won't get watching the news. They won't even get listening to you and I. And so that's what I've done in all 4 of my books. And Moonshine over Georgia, I think, is my best work in that arena. And I'm so gratified by the number of readers that have gone to the trouble to contact me, either sent me a postcard or through Facebook Messenger or however they choose to, that were really uplifted by the book. And one of the targets that I hit, that I wrote with this intentionally in mind, I was wanting to appeal to women in our demographic that were seeking a male character of virtue, and for once, a hard-charging police officer. My grandfather, my main character, was a revenue agent who isn't an alcoholic, who isn't almost as sketchy as the bad guy he's going after, or what the book publishers like to call an anti-hero. But he's a real hero who loves his wife, is incredibly dedicated to his children and his community, and risks his life for all of the above. And so I'm getting that kind of feedback from women readers. I had a 96-year-old reader come to a book signing. She already had the book, but she wanted me to sign her book. She was 96 years old, and she had a broken leg, and she had her grandsons carry her in fireman style to meet me and give me a hug and get her book signed. And she had tears in her eyes about how much the book meant to her. But the other thing that has happened is I've had at least 100 messages from men readers. Men in our culture have largely stopped reading. I don't know all the reasons. I think part of the reason is we don't give them stuff to read that they like. But 80% of all book buyers, this is a real statistic, are female. So I've had at least 100 messages from men all over this country, and they all say something similar to, I hadn't read a book in 20 years. I read yours in 2 days because I couldn't put it down. And that's the best thing I could hear as a writer. So I hope your readers will consider it. It's on Amazon.com.
Right. No, the book's excellent. And, that's the thing. Our culture's lost, being a masculine man is a bad thing. It's okay if you put a dress on, put some lipstick, and then we accept you. But just being a real type A, hardworking man who believes in family and faith, that's why we got to win in November, because we've got to fight for these, the family and our country. Well, Chris, I'll have you back because we got a lot going on, and I liked it. Oh, this political conversation was fabuloso, I'll tell you.
Thanks. I'm glad. Sorry for the little snafu early on with my phone.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. And it's been an honor having you on, and we want everybody to check out Moonshine Over Georgia because Father's Day, and everybody in your family should read. It's excellent. And we'll have you back. I've been talking with Chris Skates, and thanks for joining Veronica Live.
Thank you very much.